Seneca Teaches Misfortune 2020. In this video, we're going to introduce you to one single quote of one of the great Stoic thinkers, Seneca. Think of this as kind of like a Stoic starter kit. We're going to break down this one quote, see how we can apply it, and see what it truly means. What was Seneca's intent with this? What up, fam? Dr. James W. Stalkup, a.k.a. Jimmy Joe Coltrane. Let's get started. Seneca teaches misfortune. So listen to this quote. Very, very powerful quote. Very famous quote. To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden. Now that's a quote. To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden. So I want to break this down, and I'm going to tell you, as a practicing Stoic, this stuff is possible. When I first became aware of Stoicism, it was back in 2017, it seemed like a falsehood. It seemed impossible. It seemed to me like nobody could actually do this. But it is possible. It's the ultimate kind of form of mind over matter. It's not a religion. It's like a practical application of how to deal with things in your life. So Seneca is conveying that you can take the power out of misfortune by approaching it with a calm mind. And there are several points that I think are salient when we're talking about Stoicism and how you approach misfortune. See, the Stoic doesn't think that misfortune is unfair. The Stoic doesn't think that misfortune is targeting them or somehow they're treated preferentially wrong. Like ill does not befall them more than it befalls other people. The Stoic realizes that adversity and misfortune is a part of life. Death is a part of life. Illness is a part of life. And we cannot allow these things to have power over us by allowing them to affect our consciousness. Point number one, your panic is not helpful. Panic may be helpful when it's time to jump up and run away from the lion, but in the kind of misfortune that befalls us these days, especially surrounding your job, your employment, panic is not helpful. Panic is maladaptive. Panic will harm you. Panic is a default response to stress that we don't need anymore. And see, your mind is doing the thing that it was trained to do over, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, not the thing that's going to help it in 2020. So that panic is maladaptive. Now, if the mind put us into the proper state immediately in response to these things, we would not need Stoicism. Stoicism is kind of allowing your conscious mind to overrun and overrule your lizard brain to give you the appropriate response. So your panic in times of misfortune is not helpful. It only harms you. Secondly, our reaction is our reality. So I have been, throughout my life, and especially in the times that I was not a Stoic, I have been hurt more by my response to stimulus than by the actual stimulus itself. See, we have to realize that the damage that occurs to us is very frequently self-inflicted, and it's inflicted by our minds, not by our behavior, not by our disposition, but by our lack of control over our minds. Our reaction is our reality, and we amplify misfortune by two different methods primarily. Number one is internal dialogue. Running an internal dialogue, this sort of self-talk that occurs in our minds that often focuses on misfortune, what ifs, oh, now this is going to happen. And the thing is, if it's not within our sphere of influence, we cannot dwell on that. We cannot think about it. We can prepare a reaction to it. We can influence the reaction. So, for example, if you lose your job, we can influence the ability to get another job by becoming good at job interviewing, by learning how to prepare a CV. But what we can't do is we can't devote conscious energy into an internal dialogue that is grieving or upset about that loss. The second manner in which we amplify the misfortune is through complaining. We should not complain to others about these things. Complaining to others is a way to amplify this It is a way that breathes life into the misfortune and gives it an even more focal point. It brings it more into focus. It gives it more significance in our consciousness. And it will eat up cognitive bandwidth. It will affect your relationship with your family. It'll affect your relationship with your friends. It'll affect your ability to overcome the misfortune. There are a lot of bad things that happen from complaining and internal dialogue. So what does the calm mind do to misfortune? Well, the calm mind minimizes the misfortune. Like the calm mind, your perception, your interpretation can't mean that the misfortune did not happen, but it can certainly minimize its impact on your life. And the calm mind is the rational mind. It allows you to deal with the problem rationally. Panic is the opposite of calm. Panic will make you make knee-jerk reactions, bad decisions. You will be hasty in your response. The calm mind is much better at solving problems. When I was in medical school, I had to force myself into a very calm mental state during exams because I knew that if I started to let my blood pressure and my heart rate get up and started to get panicky, it would impair my ability to solve problems. This is what happens in your life when you have misfortune. You have to be able to calmly approach those problems. Imagine a ship in the storm. If you're out at sea and you're on a ship and there's a storm, how do you want the captain to appear? Do you want the captain of the ship to be panicked and running around? No, you want the captain to be very calm, appraise the situation, take in all the data, and then make a decision based on that. And lastly, I want to talk about a calm mind and emotional burden. So emotional burden, because when we're talking about misfortune, make no mistake, we're very frequently talking about the death of those who are close to us. And in this death, in this emotional state, there is a burden. But there's actually two forms of burden. I think there's two categories of emotional burden when it comes to illness and death of people who mean a lot to us, right? One is the natural burden. I would, and I don't know what a Stoic would call this, but sort of the organic burden, the natural burden, the normal grieving process. At no point should any Stoic say something or influence you to think that grief is not a natural thing. Grief is very, very natural. We all experience this. I would be very concerned if someone's Stoic practice had reached to the point that they did not experience grief. Now, that's an organic grief. That is a natural grief. I believe that is built into our DNA. That is so deeply implanted in our lizard brain. I don't think we can overcome that. But there is an unnatural grief, okay? There is a grief that is manufactured, and this grief is not necessarily related to the actual loss of life or loss of health. This grief is amplified in the circumstances surrounding it that are outside of our control and should not be allowed to fester. These little embers should be put out. I have a great quote that a friend of mine told me. Katie, she's wonderful. And she told me, she said, your first emotional response is free. So if something happens to you, you're going to have an immediate visceral emotional response, but the second one's on you. And so there is a normal grief process, but there are things surrounding grief that it does not do us any benefit to dwell on. And the calm, rational mind can suppress those and then allow the organic and natural grief to run its course. Hey, I hope you liked this video. If you're into Stoicism, I got a playlist just for you. Make sure and click like and click subscribe. We're publishing new videos weekly, and thanks for watching.